Hello, and welcome back to
Fame or Shame. Today is a special episode. We will be analyzing two very important candidates from the time period of the Civil Rights Movement.
Who do you think will be featured on today's episode? If you think you know, take a guess.
If you guessed Martin Luther King Jr. and Richard Nixon, you are correct.
First off, we will be analyzing some of the elements that led us to believe that Richard Nixon should be inducted into either the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame. But that's for the judges to decide, so let's get to it.
It is reported that Richard Nixon gambled while in the military and used these winnings to fund his political campaign. Did you know this, Emilio?
I did not, but that sounds like a very shameful act to me.
Yes, I would agree.
I also heard that during his political debate with John F. Kennedy, he appeared nervous, pale, and sweaty, like he had a lack of confidence.
Yes, indeed. That hurt his political image for a few years. But you know what hurt his image even more?
No, what would that be?
His involvement with Watergate. A scandal where there was a burglary at the Democratic National Headquarters in the Watergate Hotel.
Oh yes, I'm familiar with that incident. Although there was no proof that Nixon was involved with the scandal, there was proof of his attempts to cover it up.
Yes, this led him to have an inevitable impeachment, although he resigned from office before the impeachment could be executed.
Impeachment would have been very shameful, but it's even more shameful that he resigned from office before it could be executed.
If you ask me, he should be inducted into the Hall of Shame. But let's hear what the people think.
What do you know about Richard Nixon?
Richard Nixon was President of the United States when I was a kid. I don't remember his inauguration, but I do remember his resignation, and I remember Gerald Ford becoming president.
What is your opinion on Richard Nixon?
That's a good question. I know that over the years, I've never formed my own opinion, but I've heard varying opinions about him, where he was a great president that made an unfortunate mistake. I've heard that he was a horrible president that broke the law and resigned before he was impeached. But as far as my own opinion, I'm still questioning that.
Do you think Richard Nixon should be inducted into the Hall of Fame or Hall of Shame?
I don't think any president should be inducted into a Hall of Fame, but again, it goes back to the previous question. I guess if I had to choose between the two, it would be the Hall of Shame and not the Hall of Fame. Regardless of his guilt, Watergate was, against the law. People broke the law. It left a bad taste in everyone's mouth regarding the government, and I think, some of that perpetuates today.
Judges? And there you have it. Richard Nixon is inducted into the Hall of Shame.
Following the break, we will be discussing the achievements of Martin Luther King Jr. and whether he should be inducted to the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame. And we're back.
Welcome back. Now, before jumping into some of the most important and notable events, we've asked some people to give us their opinion about Dr. King. What do you know about MLK?
MLK was a great leader that has great influence over the American society. He was a guy who fought for the civil rights for the African Americans, and also the way that the guy did it was just using peace to protest and get the results.
What is your opinion on MLK?
Well, the society in general, any activity that involves humans needs to have great leaders. When something is not doing well, it's not working right, you need to have somebody that make a step forward and talk for the others and inspire and produce the change that is necessary in order to work together and build a better society. So to me, he's a great leader of the history, Some people consider him a hero for the Americans, and I believe he was definitely a cornerstone for the change in the society.
Do you believe Martin Luther King Jr. should be inducted into the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame?
I will say absolutely fame, because it was, as I said before, one of the great leaders that helped this society to become strong and powerful.
Let's see what MLK has in store. For one, he was one of the leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott in an attempt to end segregation.
Yes, and more on segregation. He helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Committee and became its first president.
That sounds like a great accomplishment to me. Did he do anything else?
I heard he gave a great speech in Washington.
Oh, of course, the I Have a Dream speech. He gave this speech during the March on Washington, and it established the common goal of the Civil Rights Movement, the goal of equality.
Ah, yes. I remember that speech like it was yesterday.
Emilio, you weren't even alive when that speech was given.
Anyway, Martin Luther King Jr. was the youngest person ever to receive the Nobel Prize, so obviously others recognized him for his good deeds.
Yes, that is a great accomplishment. Did you know that all of protests were completely nonviolent?
No, I did not know that.
In his letter from Birmingham jail, he states that he used moral means to preserve immoral ends. This was a time of questioning for MLK, but he continued to use nonviolent methods afterwards.
That sounds very honorable.
Yes, it does indeed. Now, let's check in with our judges and see what they think.
Judges, should Martin Luther King Jr. be inducted into the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Shame?
After receiving word from our judges, we have decided that MLK will be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Thank you all for watching this episode, and we'll see you next time on
Fame or Shame!